Welcome back to Port Elizabeth, the beautiful city. We resume where I promised at the St. George's Park Cemetery, uh, which was established in 1854. I think that is even before the park was established. So this was on the edge of town, really, and uh, there were a lot of Scottish immigrants came out to South Africa, and they basically set up their own cemetery here, as opposed to the one down in the valley at St. Mary's. And yeah, when I visited, as I wrote here, appalling signs of vandalism and vagrancy. Yeah. But anyway, here, looking at it, you could think you were in the country, surrounded by these lovely trees. The only intrusion is these floodlights at the St. George's Park cricket ground. Yeah, so as I say, it's wedged between the country's oldest tennis court and one of the oldest cricket fields. I've sort of gone through each one of these headstones and so forth. So I won't stop now to look at each one, but you can pause it and read. It's quite interesting. I mean, killed by the falling of a scaffold in Main Street, aged 24 in 1859. That's a whole life. I've just read an interesting thing that little line on your tombstone between when you were born and when you die, that little dash represents your entire life. So what you do with that dash is going to determine how people will remember you. So I think we must remember to make the best of our dash. So some lovely ornate headstones. There are one or two I'm going to single out. Look at this razor wire. It's a sign of the times, and this ugly fencing here. So there's the Duck Pond Pavilion at the St. George's Park cricket ground that opened in the early 90s. Designed by John Rushmere and some other guy. From Sheffield, Yorkshire, died in 1876, aged 40. So any Scottish viewers might find some distant relatives here. Murdoch Mackenzie, a native of Scotland. Oh, I'm not sure if that's Scottish. Died in the performance of his duty on the beach, probably body surfing. Ferguson, another famous Scottish surname. Mackay, born at Woolwich. So although they've got Scottish surnames, they weren't always from Scotland. Kaiser's Beach, who knows? IHS stands for Jesus. I did quite a lot of research for this PowerPoint that I never showed anyone. I sold quite a few as DVDs, so there are a few people with this in their possession. Not many. And here we get the story of the vagrants and vandalism. A vagrant's jacket or something and a broken tombstone. But it gets worse. And then they cordoned it all off with lovely, lovely, but effective, that supposedly effective steel fencing, only for me to see quite recently that a piece had been torn asunder and was again being used as a vagrant's bloody place of refuge. Goldschmidt. We had a Goldschmidt at primary school. There are a lot of German immigrants in East London where I grew up. So I was born in Hamburg. Peter Goldschmidt. Yeah, Peter. And the building in the background is the King George VI Art Gallery. It actually was the EPSAC Gallery mentioned earlier in the previous one, the EP Society of Arts and Crafts Gallery. But then the municipality later took it over, added a second wing, and in about the 1950s, the second wing was added and it became the King George VI Gallery. Subsequently renamed under the new regime, of course. So I'm glad I have this record, because who knows how long this sacred place is going to be left in peace, you know. It might be just left in pieces. Look at how ornate this one is. William Bennett Todd. A minister's grave, Presbyterian. Attorney at law. Look at that cross just cast aside, knocked off the plinth on the right. So I enjoy cemeteries. I think they, particularly these historic ones, have so much character and there's such a mood about them. And it's not a sort of a nasty mood. I think it's all the statuary that and all the crosses. I mean, those are positive things. It's a wonderful array there amongst all that foliage. Also like this. So many surnames here. You don't hear the surname Sutter, but here he was. Piercy. Yeah, so we had a photographer on the Herald with the surname Piercy. Pugh. Desecrated grave. Fortunately not broken. O'Grady. Kioch. Here we got the Afrikaans name coming in, Johan Krom and Anna Krom. And a beautiful churchyard, graveyard. No church nearby, interestingly. So my wife's mother's maiden name was Elliot. In fact, she has an uncle called Bill Elliot. So it'd be interesting to see if they're any relative. Mother Elliot, sure. Yeah, so this one, I don't know if I've covered it here, but this is the tomb of a Kemp for whom the obelisk was erected in the market square originally by Jock Patterson. It was his business partner. He had this huge thing imported from the UK. And it stood there for it was supposed to come into the cemetery and stand at his grave. And the family wouldn't accept that. So he instead had it erected in the middle of the market square, and it stood there for like 50, 60 years. It now is a forlorn, half of it, bottom third of it is gone, and it's standing outside next to the Bay World, which is where the museum relocated in about 1960. So this is that Kemp, but I don't think I'll go into that story here. I only discovered it later. Yeah, John Patterson. Grave of the wife of Patterson, the first editor of the Eastern Province Herald. Okay, so he was related to Kemp. Died in 1858, aged 27. Sure. And Patterson went on to establish the Standard Bank. He started the Grey High School. Famous figure. Gee, and they lost a child there as well, aged 2 years old. Sure. I'd forgotten about this. And Heeg, there's a Heeg Road in PE. Another Heeg. Kemsley, there's Kemsley Park. So a lot of these could be foundational members of this community, Port Elizabeth. And there's spade here amongst this stuff. It's interesting. Chicks. So Chick. William Henry Chick is on this gravestone. Chick scrap metal. Who would have thought there's a person called Chick? Asher African Shovel Company, Germiston. Bizarre. Would that spade have been used to dig these graves? Wares, and there's a Wares Road in Mill Park. Here we go through all these little graves. Children. So we're outside the cemetery now, looking in towards it from Park Drive, and subsequently they've put up that fence supposedly to protect the graveyard, but who knows? So at this point, the municipality was actually still worrying about establishing nice gardens and so forth. If this thing would just focus again, there we go. But that didn't last. Eh? And that's the actual formal entrance to this place. I actually entered it illegally next to the tennis courts. And that is that. So, till next time, cheers.